Show me Victor. Her children are monsters. I'm haunting all of the people around me. Is that not super f***ing creepy? I hope everything is going great. My name is Cherie and I am back with some dumplings mukbang. As usual, if you want to skip the chit chat and jump straight to the beginning of the story, there's a timestamp in the description. You can click on it and it'll send you right to where the story begins. But I'm alone today, so there's really not going to be that much chit chat. Today I am eating dumplings and soup from SenseFood. They have really special dumpling flavors, and those are also low-calorie dumplings. Even though it is my cheat day on mukbang days, I still like to kind of, watch my calorie intake and carb intake. Does anyone get triggered by me just speaking while waving my chopsticks around? And I put it down. Sorry. I boiled some of them and I pan fried some of them so that we can have pot stickers and dumplings. And you can see that there are different colors. Here I have regular cabbage and pork, chive and pork. This is salmon and quinoa. Quinoa? I never know how to pronounce that word. Is that English? This one here is chicken and truffle. So I have my dipping sauce here. I love chili, obviously, and I love stuff to be a little bit sour. So I have vinegar with just fresh chili peppers and some soy sauce. But I was thinking, chicken and truffle. So I got some olive oil and balsamic, which is literally the Italian version of soy sauce and vinegar. But I'm thinking that I'm gonna try dipping the truffle ones into that. And here they have tomato beef soup and Chinese spicy and sour soup. These are my mom's favorite, so I'm probably gonna just try some and save it for her. I don't think I can alone finish like 2 bowls of soup and all of these dumplings. There are 24 dumplings here and I already had 4 before we began. I can eat a lot, but not that much. Without further ado, let's start eating. I'm on my period, I am starving. Which one should I start with? I'm gonna start with the chicken and truffle. I can breathe in the truffle. You know how truffle has this almost gassy scent to it? It's really strong. And there's something crunchy in here. I kind of like the texture. I'm surprised. I didn't think I would like it because I don't really particularly love truffle, but I love chicken. So the other chicken flavor they had was chicken and cilantro. And I know this is gonna trigger a lot of people, but I hate cilantro. Did you know that if you hate cilantro, it's genetics? It's not even that I'm a picky eater. It's just my genes tell me it's poisonous. I'm a genius. I'm a genius, I'm a genius. Give me an award. It goes so well with the olive oil and balsamic. Now that I have overcome my seafood allergies, I can have these salmon quinoa dumplings. It's so pretty. I don't know. I like this one. I like this one even better than the chicken one. I'm very surprised because I feel like cooked salmon gets really dry, but I have no problem with this. And these dumplings have been boiled for quite a while. It's still delicious and it smells really good. It doesn't taste fishy at all. I almost feel like it's chicken, but actually it's even juicier than the chicken and truffle one. Which sauce should I? Maybe let's try some chili sauce. But I think it's really good just on its own because you can really taste the seasoning of the dumpling itself. Because I use so much chili in the sauce, I feel like it kind of overpowers the dumplings a little bit. My bad. I'm gonna try a pot sticker for the cabbage one because I want to eat the cabbage and chive dumplings in the beef soup. Have you guys ever had like beef soup dumplings? Best. I don't know how they do the meat. It's so juicy and soft. I can imagine just the paste-like consistency that you dream of when you make dumplings. Do you guys dream of these things? I dream of these things. I had the craziest dream the other day. where I was in a supermarket and there were all of these colorful vegetables. There were green, yellow zucchinis and orange zucchinis. I don't even know if these exist in real life. And all kinds of colors of strawberries and lemons. I have weird dreams. That's what I dream about. I dream about shopping at amazing farmer markets. I need to dream bigger. Anyway, these are so fresh. I love it. Some dumplings have this like weird stink to it from the pork. It's almost like the pork is not fresh, or they didn't process it well, or they didn't use enough ginger or whatever. But this, not at all. And sometimes some dumplings, like you bite into it and there's like these cartilage in there that's not supposed to be there and you can't really bite through it. It's you have to spit it out. That's not happening with these. And the chive ones. If you love chives, you love this one. I love it. And let me show you guys. Do you see how much chives they used? It's like, wow. Okay, I'm sorry. I should really get into the story, but I'm just let me enjoy this just for another second. The regular flavors go so well with the sauce. It's just a match made in heaven, I'm telling you. Chinese food, genius. I'm gonna try a little bit of this soup and we're gonna get into today's story. All right. You know, tomatoes naturally contain MSG. It's like, it's not man-made chemical MSG. It's what people attempt to recreate when they make artificial MSG. So, gosh, it really brings out the soup so well. I mean, you could really taste the beef. And I really love how their food is not super salty. I'm gonna put some dumplings in here and I'm gonna start with today's story. I'm gonna start with soup dumplings and then I'm gonna eat the pot stickers. But let me try a little bit of that soup as well. Ooh, that's a lot of veggies in here. And it's much clearer than normal sour and spicy soup, which I like because usually it's really sticky and slimy because they use a lot of starch to thicken it. That's not just not healthy, but I also feel like, why am I drinking slime as a soup? Like, it's not fungus, it's not like, it's weird. Ooh, I feel like dumplings would go well in these too. The bamboo is so crunchy and the fungus is like a little bit crunchy but soft. And with this egg, oh. I like it. I'm happy. So today is our first episode in Spooktober. So I'm telling you guys a scary story. Don't click out yet if you are really afraid of ghosts and ghost stories, because I am really afraid of ghost stories. But this one, I loved it so much. It's almost like it's more like a mystery than a ghost story, and I think it didn't really leave me very afraid. Because usually after I watch a scary movie, listen to a scary story, gosh, I have problem going to sleep. Like, I have problems getting up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I have problems looking at the hallway outside of my room. Because the way my room is designed, you open my door immediately, you're facing a hallway, and at the end of the hallway, it is a mirror. Do you know how many horror movies have it set up like that? Oh, it's so good with the soup. Because it's not just beef, but the tomato is a little bit sour. Yes. My only complaint is I've been speaking for a while and the soup is not piping hot anymore. I love my food piping hot. Sometimes when soup get cold, it feels like it's like very greasy and you can't swallow. I don't have a problem with this one, and I can barely see any oil floating on top, because really When I got these stuff from SenseFood, like I read it up on the internet. The whole idea behind their brand is that they want to create low-calorie but delicious food. So it's like low-fat in a sense that because these kind of Chinese food, you don't typically get to use like a lot of good fats like omega-3, except for, I mean, this one, salmon one, obviously. It's higher in fat, but it's omega-3, so that's great. And the rest, they're low fat, and even though there are, of course, carbs because of the dumpling wrappings, but it's also pretty low in carb. I will be writing a blog post about these because I think they're so delicious, and I will link it down below and you can find out more about it. Definitely recommend. I usually eat like 8 to 10 dumplings a meal. If you eat 8 to 10 of these dumplings and you don't have any other refined carbs, it's actually within keto standards. So that's good. I don't know any other dumpling where I could do that. Oh, it's so tough. It's falling apart. Okay. Story. So, story starts with you just hearing a blood-curdling scream. The scene lights up. You see a beautiful young lady open her eyes and she wakes up from her nightmare. So initially when I got here, I thought, oh, this is gonna be one of those movies with a bunch of jump scares. Not a great start, but I was so wrong. It was so good. It was so amazing. I was on edge the entire time. Do you know how easily I fall asleep during movies? I did not even feel sleepy once, and I was watching this movie at like 1 a.m. This beautiful lady, her name is Grace. Grace wakes up. This was around 1945. World War II is about to be over. She's dressed in these typical dresses. It's always very fitted on the top, and it has such a small, tiny waist and an A-line. She looks so elegant. I'm just painting a picture for you guys, okay? She's living in this beautiful mansion. We see the windows, and there's sunlight spreading in. I'm like, oh, this is a bright and beautiful house. Someone knocks on the door and Grace goes to open it. It's 3 people. There's one old lady, one old man, and a younger girl. Oh, they don't introduce themselves. They say, we're here for, but before they could finish their sentence, Grace is like, oh, yes, of course, come in. We learn that she has been looking for help for the house. He points to the old man. You must be the gardener. And he's like, oh, yes, the gardener, of course. Yes. And Grace says the old woman is going to be the nanny, and she asks the young girl, you're quite young, do you know how to clean? Do you have experience? And the old woman says, oh, Lydia is very young, but she's a very hard worker. Like, don't worry, she doesn't have experience, but she's gonna do a good job. And Grace tells Lydia, what's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Because like, why are you not speaking for yourself? This is when we learn from the old lady, Mrs. Mills, that Lydia, the young girl, is mute. Okay, and the old man is called Mr. Tuttle, but I keep wanting to say Turtle, so I might be calling him Turtle. So she starts showing the new servants around the house, and as Grace is showing them around the house, you can see that she's always with this set of keys, and she's always unlocking, locking, opening and closing doors all over the place, and it's really confusing. She tells Mrs. Mills, as you have probably noticed that I am doing, in this house, one door has to be locked before another door is opened. You can never have 2 doors open at the same time. It's a very weird rule. We don't know why. Mrs. Mills is like, okay. And she said, do you mind me asking, like, what happened to the old servants? And Grace says, well, they just left without explanation because this is a dark place. You never know what is lurking in the shadows, if it's furniture or one of my children playing hide and seek. So the audience is confused. Mrs. Mills is confused. They're in a bright, beautiful music room with a piano and sunlight coming in through the window. So Mrs. Mills was like, what? Right? And Grace says, you'll see once you meet my children. And at this point, I was thinking, her children are monsters. Her children are monsters, right? I like how it doesn't have a weird taste even after it's cold. You know how some dumplings, because they have some pig fat in there, and after it gets cold, it has like this taste. I don't even know how to describe it. They go meet the children. She walks the servants towards the children's room and tells them to draw all of the curtains now that the house is like almost pitch black. She takes out a tiny lamp, like a traditional lamp that is like a candle. She opens the door and wakes up her children. So she tells them to come out and introduces them to the servants. And she said, this is Anne and Nicholas. They are photosensitive. So photosensitive is a condition where you are allergic to light. For different patients, it's definitely a different level of severity. But if you are exposed under this strong light, you could develop rashes and have an allergic reaction. The children are severely photosensitive to the point that if they are exposed to anything stronger than the light of a candle, they will break into rashes. They would even have difficulties breathing. That's why the doors have to always be closed, because you never know how light is going to travel. She tells Mrs. Mills, well, take the children downstairs and make them breakfast. Mrs. Mills is in the kitchen with Anne and Nicholas, completely dark, with just a little candle, and they're eating. We hear Anne say, we have to tell you, like, mom went mad. Like, Mom went mad. Nicholas is the younger brother. Nicholas says, no, she hasn't. You're lying. Stop saying that. And she says, no, Mom went mad. Mrs. Mills is like, what do you mean? Tell me. But before she could say anything, we hear Grace say, and Nicholas, I want you guys to be finished with breakfast in 2 minutes, and we're going to study. So now everybody is suspicious. We see Grace talking to Mrs. Mills. She has a letter in her hand. They're near the window, and she says to Mrs. Mills, the postman comes and pick up the letter every Wednesday. But I just noticed he didn't come this week. I went out on Friday and I found this letter that I was sending out to the newspaper to put an ad to ask for servants. So that means this letter was never sent, the ad was never posted. But why are you here? Who are you? What do you want? Mrs. Mills says, well, my lady, I wanted to tell you, but I just thought, never mind. The three of us used to work here. We loved our time at this house so much. It was like the happiest times in our lives when we were working here. And we know this house like the back of our hands. We just want to come back and work here again. And we figured such a big, beautiful house would always be looking for help. Grace says, all right then, why did you guys leave this house the last time? And she said, oh, because there was a tuberculosis outbreak and everyone got evacuated. Grace accepts this. She lets them stay. So we find out that Grace is this very, very religious woman by studying. She's just teaching her children the Bible and Bible stories all day, every day. And Anne and Nicholas are reading the story of how Jesus was captured by Roman soldiers. The Roman soldiers asked people, are you a follower of Jesus? They said yes, so they got beheaded. Now something creepy happens because Anne starts laughing when it gets to this point. She straight up starts laughing like crazy. I hate it when little children laugh in horror movies. Nicholas starts laughing as well. And Grace is like, what are you laughing about? And Anne says, well, I'm laughing because these people are stupid. They said that they are followers of Jesus, and that's why they died. And then they got beheaded for this. So Grace is like, well, then what would you do? Anne says, I'm gonna believe in Jesus in my heart, but I'm gonna tell them that I don't. Then I'm gonna be alive. Which, I mean, I don't know if that's how it works in Christianity. I'm not super religious. But that makes a lot of sense to me, all right? Grace is a very, very devout Christian. So Grace says, no, but then after you die, you will go to limbo because you lied. That's where lying children go, children limbo. I've never heard of that before. I only know like heaven and hell, but it turns out that there's like 3 or 4 different types of hell. And I was thinking that doesn't sound like it makes sense, because if you truly believe in God and Jesus in your heart, why would they punish you for, you know, lying to stay alive? Are you like absolutely not allowed to lie in Christianity? I don't even know. There's a statue of Virgin Mary right there staring at me. My mother's side of the family is Catholic. Grace is angry, but the kids are of course like, oh my God, we don't want to be listening to this. We want to play, we want to play. But Grace says, no, study first, and then maybe you can play. And starts telling Nicholas, like, oh, I was talking to Victor again. And Grace is like, who is Victor? So it turns out that there's this little boy that no one can see that Anne has been speaking to, named Victor. In modern day, if we hear this, we would just think she has an imaginary friend. But the way that Anne is telling all of these stories really, really scare Nicholas, and Anne keeps saying that Victor is a ghost. The mom is very angry. Christians do not believe in ghosts. She tells Anne, like, you have to stop it. Stop scaring your brother. You guys are going to study a new chapter. If you do not finish this new chapter, you're not going to get to play at all today. And she separates them. She says, you know what? I think you guys need to study separately. So Grace takes Anne out to another room to study. She herself goes to a different room where there is light so that she could do some embroidering. Grace asks Mrs. Mills outside in the hall while she's embroidering, was Lydia born like this? Mrs. Mills was like, what do you mean? And she said, was she born dumb? Like, which is kind of like a rude way to say mute. And Mrs. Mills says, no. And she just walks away, which to me is super creepy. Is that not super fucking creepy? Usually you say no and you explain. While she's doing this, she suddenly hears a scream. She rushes to Nicholas, and Nicholas is fine. Like, Nicholas is like, what's up? Why are you rushing in like this? She says, was it you? Was it you crying just now? He said, no. Then she rushes to the music room, which is where Anne is studying, and says, Anne, what's wrong? Are you okay? And she said, it wasn't me. I wasn't crying. So Grace is very confused. Then Anne says, it was Victor. Now Grace is really angry. Grace is like, what do you mean it was Victor? Where is Victor? Show me Victor. She said, well, he was right there. And then he went through that door. Grace says, will you tell me how a little boy shows up out of nowhere, then goes through a door that is locked? Then she turns to look at the door, and the door is slightly ajar. She's really angry. She gathers all of the servants and say, one of you forgot to close the doors. Like, did I not tell you? You have to close the doors. You're putting my children in danger. What if light comes in? What if my children die? She asked, who forgot? Obviously, it's not the gardener, because the gardener doesn't stay indoors. And she said, Lydia, was it you? Mrs. Mills said, no, Lydia doesn't even have the keys. Only you and I have the keys. And she said, so then it must be you. And Mrs. Mills said, but I was outside in the hall. Grace says, well, are you suggesting that like I forgot? Right? So of course, Mrs. Mills was like, okay, I'm sorry. I'll watch out next time. And we see the children sleeping in the room. Anne tugs on Nicholas and says, Nicholas, look. And Nicholas said, Anne, why would you open the curtains? And she said, it's not me, it's Victor. She tells Nicholas, go close the curtains. He just turns away from Anne, right? No, I can totally understand him because I have an older sister that loves to terrorize me. When we watched horror movies as kids, gosh, she would always scare me. Like, I'm really scared in the middle of the night, and I would ask her to go to the bathroom with me, and instead she would just jump scare me. Might as well have went myself. So Anne says, fine, scaredy cat, I'm gonna go close the curtain myself. She closes the curtain. The curtain's immediately open again. It's like just yanked open. and then she closes it. Then we start hearing her conversation with the voice of a little boy, but the voice is a little bit scary. But we don't see a little boy. Nicholas is freaking out. Nicholas says, Anne, stop making that voice. Anne says, it's not me, it's Victor. Nicholas tells on Anne. Okay, Nicholas goes and tells mommy. So after this, Anne gets punished. Anne has to read some Bible verse or Bible story out loud, standing on the top of the stairs, while Grace is again embroidering. Mrs. Mills walks in. Mrs. Mills says, it's been 3 days since you've been punishing her like this. I think it's enough. And she said, well, it's enough when I say it's enough. By the way, can you tell Lydia to just quiet down? I can always hear her thumping upstairs. Like, you don't have to make such a ruckus cleaning. Mrs. Mills says, yes, of course, I will tell her. She walks out. Grace continues with her work. She hears the thumping again, and it's so loud, we hear it too. She sighs, she puts down her embroidering. She's staring up at the ceiling with exasperation when she sees in the corner of her eye outside the window, Mrs. Mills is talking to Lydia outside. And Mr. Tuttle is working in the garden. Nicholas is in the downstairs kitchen studying, and Anne is on the stairs reading the Bible. So she's like, what the hell was that? She runs up the stairs, sees Anne is there where she is, and she said, did you hear that noise? Where is it coming from? And Anne said, it's there, it's over there, it's upstairs. And they went that way. And at this point, Grace is like, what do you mean they went that way? But then she heard it herself, so she believes that there are intruders. She went and then she didn't see them. She runs back and Anne said, they went down the stairs. They're everywhere. They said that this is their home. So Grace thinks that someone broke in. She gets everyone in the house. She gets the servants. They take guns. They try to look for the intruders. They find no one. And Grace sees like a door closing by itself. So she decides like, okay, there are some demons. I'm going to go to the town priest and ask him to bless this house. This house needs to be blessed. She tells Mrs. Mills this. She says, I'm gonna go get the house blessed, and she heads out. Mrs. Mills tries to stop her. She said, the fog is too thick right now. You can't go. But she insists. She said, I will find my way. And as Grace is leaving, she goes to Mr. Tuttle, the gardener, and says, will you look around like here, around our garden, in our yard, because I remember when my husband bought this house, he said that there are some graves around here. Mr. Tuttle agrees, and Grace walks out of the gate into the foggy forest to go find the priest. And we hear Mr. Tuttle and Mrs. Mills speaking. Mr. Tuttle says, are you sure it's a good idea to let her go out now? Mrs. Mills says, don't worry, the mist will take care of her. So he replies, well, I think it's all gonna come out soon. Then Mrs. Mills says, speaking of which, she points, and we see that Mr. Tuttle was raking leaves, and there's a little tombstone peeking out of the leaves. He plumps a pile of leaves on top of it and covers it. Grace is in the mist. She's walking. She's starting to get lost, and suddenly she bumps into someone. It's a man. It's her husband, and this is the first time we see her husband in the whole movie, because her husband went to fight World War II, and she did not hear from him even after the war. He's finally back. She's so happy. She gives up looking up for the priest and just takes her husband home. But her husband seems very, very confused and out of it. During this time, Anne shows Grace a picture that she drew. And she says, these are the intruders, okay? These are the people that I keep seeing. And we see a man, a woman, who she says are Victor's parents, an old woman, and Victor. Next to each of these people, she wrote a number. Grace asks her, what do these numbers mean? And she said, it's the numbers of times I saw them. And there's this one old lady with really weird eyes. Next to the picture, Anne wrote 15. And she said, I've seen this old lady the most times. She's really scary. She has no eyes. She looks like she's staring right at you. Anne is just really frustrated that nobody believes her, right? And Mrs. Mills reassures her that I believe you. And she even tells Grace, sometimes the world of the dead and the living gets mixed up. But Grace is a Christian, she doesn't believe in this shit. And now that her husband is back, she just completely forgot about the intruder. She's pretending that like there were no thumpings and like the door did not close by itself. She's not looking for it to be blessed anymore. She just wants to go back to normal. We see the husband say hi to the kids. The children are so happy. Daddy's home. But after that, the husband is just laying in bed, curled up all day, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't do nothing. And again, we hear Mr. Tuttle say to Mrs. Mills, do you think the husband is going to be a problem? And she says, no. I don't think he even knows where he is. And he's not going to stay for long. But she's going to be a problem. She's pretending like nothing ever happened. She goes up to the storage room and looks around. She finds a book of photographs and of just people sleeping in really weird positions. Mrs. Mills walks in, so she tells her, this is like the weirdest thing ever. Like, why are they taking these pictures of just people sleeping in all kinds of positions? And Mrs. Mills says, they're not sleeping, they're dead. Grace is confused. Mrs. Mills goes on to explain that people believe that if you take pictures of a person dead like that, then their souls will live on and it will guard their souls. Grace is really angry. I mean, she's Christian. She says, oh gosh, it's insane. Like, how can people be so superstitious? This is so gruesome. Burn it, get rid of it. I don't want this thing in my house. And Mrs. Mills says, yes, of course. And she takes the book. Grace goes, she takes out her embroidery. It turns out that what she was making was the communal dress for Anne. And it's completely white. It looks almost like a wedding dress. And she's almost finished with it. So she brings it to Anne, and Anne says she wants to try it on. She says, just for a little bit, please. It's so pretty. Grace says yes. And she said, but no sitting on the floor. Don't get it dirty. It's all white. Yeah? He leaves her in the room. She walks out and we see Anne staring at the mirror and just dancing on her own. She's like pretending to ask herself to dance, which is a little bit creepy. Children, wedding dresses, in horror movies, always creepy. But when Grace comes back, she sees Anne sitting on the floor. She's freaked out. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you sitting on the floor? I told you not to sit on the floor. She grabs Anne by the arm and removes her veil and sees like this face of a scary old woman with no eyes. So she screams and says, where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? Give me my daughter back. And she's like strangling Anne. And Anne starts crying. She said, it's me, Mom, it's me. She looks again and she was like, oh my God, it is Anne. So Anne cries and runs out and says, Mom's gone mad again. And Grace is saying, no, what are you saying? I would never hurt you. I love you. I would never hurt you. And Anne says, no, you hurt me. And Anne goes running to her dad. Grace can't take it anymore. Grace tells her husband, like, you have to eat something. You can't keep doing this. The husband says, Anne told me everything about that night. She said you went mad. And she said, I didn't. You know I would never hurt our children. I would never. I didn't. I just lost my temper a little bit. I did nothing to hurt them. The husband gets up. Finally, he gets up and he says, I'm gonna leave. And she's like, what do you mean you're going to leave? This is your home. Like, where are you gonna go? And he said, I'm going to war. She said, the war is over. The husband still insists on leaving. She collapses onto the bed. She just Disney princess style starts crying, says, Why did you have to leave? Why did you have to go and fight that stupid war? This is where you belong. This is your place. With us, this is where you should be. Why did you go fight this war that had nothing to do with us? The husband feels so bad. He leans down, hugs her, kisses her. They have sex. She's happy. They're holding each other. They fall asleep, but after she falls asleep, the husband gets up and leaves. When she wakes up, there's no longer anyone next to her. She just tries to go back to normal. She tries to pretend that nothing ever happened. So the dad leaves. The next morning, Grace wakes up and she hears her children screaming, just screaming. And she's panicked and she rushed to the room, and we see that the children are hiding next to their beds. There's sunlight coming in. The curtains are open. And we see Grace's point of view looking at the window once more, and we realize the curtains are not open. The curtains are gone. So Grace takes off her robe, wraps her children in it, and rushes them into another room. But they go into room after room after room, and all of the curtains are gone. Finally, they find a room where there's no light. She puts them in there. And she starts going through the entire house looking for the curtains. She's like throwing out all of the shelves all over the place. And she can't find the curtains. She goes up to the storage room. She's looking for the curtains. And the shelves start moving on their own. She's going crazy. She starts throwing the shelves over. She cannot find the curtains. She gets the servant. She said, it must be them. They did it. They did it on purpose, right? They stole it. Mrs. Mills says, no, we didn't. We didn't take the curtains. And she said, well, do you think it was me? Like, do you think I would put my children in such danger myself? And Mrs. Mills said, well, it was a long time ago that the doctor diagnosed them with photosensitivity. And if you don't expose them to light again, how would you know? Maybe they're not allergic anymore, which is like a really weird statement. So Grace is really angry. Grace decides to throw the servants out, and they wouldn't leave. So she takes out a gun, points it at Mrs. Mills, and demands that she return the keys. So Mrs. Mills is like, okay. She gives back the keys, and the three of them leave. And Grace is still distraught. She has not found the curtains. The children are sleeping, and Anne says to Nicholas, it's night. I'm going out. I'm gonna go look for Dad. Nicholas says, I wanna come too. And she says, no, you're such a scaredy cat. Like, you can't, you won't come with me. And Anne climbs out of the window, jumps down, and Nicholas says, wait, no, I'm coming. So he plucks up all of his courage and follows Anne out, and they're walking in the dark. He tells Anne, I'm so scared. Can you say something so I won't be scared? And Anne is being a nice older sister. She holds Nicholas's hand and says, well, I'm Anne and I am walking. I'm walking and my name is Anne. After a while, Anne starts walking faster in front, while Nicholas is catching up from behind. As they are about to exit the gate, there are a pile of leaves, and during this time, Grace is inside the house. She's going through the servants' quarters, and she finds a picture under their mattress. And it's a picture of Mr. Tuttle, Lydia, and Mrs. Mills dead, just like in the Book of the Dead, and it's marked 1891. So she freaks out, and she realizes that her children are not in the house. Meanwhile, outside, Anne bumps into the pile of leaves, finds out that it's 3 graves. She moves the leaves away, and she sees that the 3 names, Retta Mills, Mr. Tuttle, and Lydia. She turns around. She sees Nicholas is still kind of far away, but the 3 servants are walking towards him, and that's not a great time to get a message. And she screams, no, Nicholas, come here, they're dead, come here. And Nicholas said, no, but you're always scaring me. You're always tricking me. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. And then she said, I promise I'm not lying. Come here, they're coming. So Nicholas runs to Anne, and they run home. And Grace, at this time, she realizes something is wrong. She grabs a gun, she rushes out of the house and tells the children to go inside. They go into the house, and the 3 servants are still walking towards them at just like this slow pace. They're not panicking at all, and it's so creepy. And Grace fires at them. Once, it doesn't work. Twice, it doesn't work. And Mrs. Mills said, we have died from tuberculosis more than half a century ago. You can't hurt us. So Grace freaks out. Grace runs back into the house, and then she shuts the door. She locks them outside. And it turns out these ghosts, they cannot go through walls. Okay? So Grace tells them, like, leave me and my children alone. All three of them, they're just like standing so close to the glass door, they just have their face on the door. And Mrs. Mills said, well, you have us locked outside now, but you have no one to help you anymore. You're gonna have to face them alone. And she said, like, who? Mrs. Mills says, the intruders. Now you have to go upstairs and talk to them yourselves. They're with your children. So Grace freaks out. Grace runs upstairs. She hears a huge thump. She opens the door. She goes inside and she sees her children standing there. And there's a table in the center with the old woman sitting there. Nicholas is sitting on the ground while Anne is standing up next to the old woman. And Anne says, I'm gonna tell them. Nicholas says, no, don't tell them, don't tell them. We flash, we see there's a man sitting next to the old woman and he's also saying, don't tell them, don't tell them. But Anne says, I have to. If I tell them, then they'll leave us alone. We see her walk up to the old woman and she whispers into the old woman's ear. The old woman says, well, yes, we know. You live here and your mother went mad, but what are you doing here lingering in death? The children and Grace start screaming, we're not dead, we're not dead. And the children are really angry. They start banging on the desk and Grace runs over and then she shakes the table, hoping to get her attention, and she throws paper into the air. And suddenly, the next scene, we see a group of people sitting around the table with the old woman. The table is shaking like crazy. Paper is flying around in the air. Everyone looks terrified and we cannot see Grace and the two children. Everything settles down and we see what appears to be Victor's mom stand up and say, well, I don't care what this is. I don't want to stay here anymore. That little girl has been talking to Victor, and even this woman has been possessed by that crazy little girl like several times. I don't care what's going on. We have a new baby. We're leaving tomorrow. And then we see in the house again, Grace lets the three servants in. She's sitting on the ground holding her children and she said, I'm sorry. I was just so stressed. Every day I had to take care of everything. I'm so afraid of letting just a little bit of light in. And I took the pillows and I smothered my own children. I took a shotgun and put it to my head and ended everything. But then when I woke up, I saw you guys playing with the pillows and you were so happy. And I thought it was a nightmare. God must have given me another chance. And Mrs. Mills comes over and she says, well, I told you, sometimes the world of the dead and the world of the living cross paths here. We're just gonna have to live with it, but we can do it together now. And Grace tells her, Mrs. Mills, please go get us some water. And she says, of course, my lady. The last scene, curtains are open. The kids are ghosts. They're not allergic to the sun anymore. Grace stands there with her two children looking out of the window. And we see Victor's family moving out. Victor is the last to walk away. He's standing on the first floor, looking out through the window, looking at them. And his father comes over and guides him away. Grace says, don't worry, this is our home. No one can drive us out of here. As Victor's family drives away, we see a for sale sign gets hung on the house once again. It's a really, really good twist, no? Did you guys see it coming? Oh. While I was watching the movie, I started from, okay, the servants are creepy. The servants are trying to drive them out of their own house. And I was thinking, oh no, the children are ghosts. The children are dead. That's why they can't see light. And the mom is crazy. My mom can see ghosts. And then at several points throughout the movie, I actually guessed. I was like, I think they're the ones that are dead. But I never guessed like them and the servants, like they're all dead. I kept thinking, yeah, I think they're the ones that are dead. And I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be such a shitty reveal. Like, how are they gonna do that? But the reveal, shit, it was so good because when you watch horror movies, you always see them like move the cabinets around, throwing things everywhere, or when they're trying to contact the spirit, the table is moving and the paper is flying everywhere and we never know why. Like, why would they do that, right? What is in the ghost's interest to mess up your house? It turns out they're looking for something. It turns out they're trying to catch your attention. They're trying to tell you that they're not dead. Oh shit, the scene, the reveal, it's so good. Even though you guys had the spoilers, I still really recommend that you go watch that movie. At least the scene of the reveal, because it's done so well. Even though at that point I already kind of knew, I was still shocked. I didn't think that was gonna be the scene where they do the reveal because I didn't see it coming. I didn't think of filming like that. It's just, I don't know how to explain. Do you guys understand? It's so good. Wow. And I think, like I said, it doesn't really make you feel so scared because throughout the entire movie, you're on the main character's side and the main characters turn out to be ghosts, right? So throughout the whole movie, you're on the ghost side and you almost think that they're good people. But you know, this actually digs into one of my biggest fears. Is it just me? Or do you guys have this too? Let me know in the comments or something, or on my Instagram. I have this huge fear that everything that I am going through right now is not real. I'm actually dead and I'm haunting all of the people around me and I think that I'm interacting with them. Or I'm actually crazy and I'm imagining all of these things that are happening around me and I'm actually just here eating hospital food, but I think I'm over here eating delicious low-calorie dumplings, filming a mukbang. And like, so few of my friends have met Aries, right? So then I'm thinking, oh my god, like he doesn't exist. And then I rented an apartment somewhere and I'm just going there, living in my fantasy world, having these illusions. That is something that I'm really afraid of, that is scarier than ghosts, because our brains are actually so crazy and can trick us into believing so many things. And sometimes I really wonder, like, how much of what I think is true is actually true, or is it just how I perceive it? This movie is actually called The Others. And it came out in 2001. It's starring Nicole Kidman. So imagine Nicole Kidman, she's already beautiful. And her 20 years ago, the same year Moulin Rouge came out, just absolutely pristine, beautiful, looks so innocent. And she is so terrified and genuine and devout throughout the entire movie. And at the very end, you get this reveal. You see the way that an emotion flashes through her face and you suddenly think, oh my god, this woman is actually deranged. Like, she killed her own children, then killed herself, and then now she's saying, nobody can drive us out. Like, oh, it gives me goosebumps. I don't know, it's so good. You guys, this video does not do the movie justice, okay? Like, you have to watch the original movie. Also, I don't know if, like, I kind of mixed up some of the order of some of the haunted events, but I think it does not affect the overall storyline. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I am also done with my food except for the soup, so I guess my mom gets to have some soup. I am so full. I'm gonna go lie in my bed and be a lazy ass. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. One like is one dumpling. Don't forget to check out SenseFood, linked in the description, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!